Let me clarify, this happened during my college's Halloween celebration a few years ago, and this is the most terrifying experience of my life. One of my roommates, some of my friends and myself left to go to a party around dusk, and we were catcalled by a group of 3 drifters and homeless people. We thought nothing of it and went on our merry way. About 4 hours later, we were going back to our apartment to change shoes. High heels and messed up streets are hell when you've been drinking. And when one of the drifters calls out to me, "Hey beautiful, how about a kiss?" Me being a little drunk and sassy, I reply, "No thanks, girls are more my type." To my shock and horror, he says, "Hey, my friend here likes the ladies." A homeless girl comes out of nowhere and proceeds to kiss me on the mouth. My friend picks me up and throws me over his shoulder. I proceed to flip the fuck at him in my apartment, shrug it off, and we venture back out. Well, I got separated from my group in a crowd, and then I see the 3 drifters again. I try not to show that I'm shifting bricks when they ask me where they can find a liquor store. I point down the street to the Kroger, and they say, "Okay, you can show us." I'm a small woman, and they shoved me into their vehicle. I think naively at the time they will literally let me out at the grocery store. Except it's closed because it's after midnight. I plead for them to let me out of the car, but they keep saying that the power does what it wants, and headed away from the safety of the campus area onto the freeway and out of the state. For the next 4 hours, I visited 3 states with them, while pleading for my life. I'll never forget how they kept saying the power does what it wants, and talking about how they're going to have fun with me. I kind of resigned myself to the fact that I was going to die, that I was never going to graduate college or see my family again. They pulled into a gas station. I slipped out of the vehicle to be grabbed again. But I screamed my head off for the clerk to help. That's when they talked to me. They talked about taking me to the cliff. I mentioned that my family is full of police officers and that they're probably already looking for me, how they're committing a federal crime, and that I won't press charges if they take me back to campus. I guess that's when the girl started to feel sorry for me because she started to say, "Guys, she's really scared. Maybe we shouldn't drop her off anywhere. This doesn't have to get any worse." They took me up to the campus area, and as soon as the girl pulled me out of the car, a police officer called my name. The girl shoves me toward the cop and yelled, "The power does what it wants, and tonight it lets you live." I've never been so happy to sit in a cruiser. They pursued them, but I don't know if they were ever caught. My roommate dropped out of college and joined the military. And I, on the other hand, transferred to another school. So, creepy drifters and homeless people, I hope we never, ever meet again. Halloween has unfortunately never been a big deal out here in Scotland, and that's always bummed me out because I love Halloween. But after this year, I think I'll be happy never celebrating again. My street and the next street over have a lot of young kids who go out trick-or-treating. So while I was out shopping all day with my mom, we decided to pick up some sweets in case anyone came to the door. I had plans to go out to the cinema to see Ouija with my boyfriend, so when I got home, I was getting myself ready to go out with my mom, and my mom was busy putting the shopping away. So when the first load of kids came to the door, I was the one who had to answer it. There were children from our street, the next one over, and some I couldn't recognize, as well as an adult at the end of the pass. I guess either a father or an older brother by their size. And they were dressed all in black and had some sort of mask covering their face. It wasn't anything I recognized from a movie or anything. Anyway, they told me their jokes and I gave them their treats, and they made their way back down the path, and out onto the next house. I was about to close the door when I noticed that the guy with the kid was standing still at the end of my path. He hadn't noticed, and he wasn't watching the children either. He was looking right at me, and my skin started to crawl when I realized that he was just staring at me. I backed slowly into the house and watched him as he raised his hand and waved very, very slowly at me. And I was about to call out to him when my mom came to the door to make sure I was alright, and he took off in the opposite direction, the opposite way from the children. He hadn't been with them at all, and he left as soon as he realized that I wasn't home alone. I completely freaked out and told my boyfriend all about it when he came to the house to pick me up, but I quickly forgot all about it when we were watching the movie. When I finally got home, it was getting really late, and trick-or-treating was well and truly over around here. When I got inside, my mom was just getting ready to take the dogs out for a walk so that they could do their last-minute business, and they would meet my dad on his way home from work, so I was going to be home alone. After my horrible encounter posted on here, I don't really like being home alone, but it's worse on Halloween, and it always has been. Anyway, I was home alone, and I grabbed some snacks, and I went up to my bedroom and onto my computer so that I could do some writing, scroll through Tumblr, and listen to music. After my first creepy encounter with the guys coming into my house and into my backyard, my dad bought a motion sensor light and attached it to the wall of our house right outside my window. Normally, it would go off whenever a cat walks along our fence, but it usually goes off after a couple of minutes. I always know when the light has come on because it lights up my whole room given where it's placed, and while I was sitting at my computer, the light came on. I ignored it at first because I knew that it would go off soon, but 5 minutes passed and it still hadn't gone off, so I opened my blinds to have a look outside and see what was going on. My stomach almost fell out of my ass when I looked and saw the creep from hours before sitting on the fence waving at my window to keep the light on. His waving slowed down suddenly when he spotted me, and it was seriously creepy again, and I didn't know what to do. I just got flashbacks from before. Luckily, I heard the front door open and my parents coming into the house with the dog, so I rushed down to the stairs and started screaming at them about the guy on the fence. My dad didn't question me. He just took the dogs and rushed through the house, threw the back door open, and ran outside, and I heard him shouting, "Get the fuck out of here, you creep. I'm going to phone the police." Dad scared him off, but I convinced him not to call the police because I didn't want to relive the whole thing again. I just wanted to go to sleep and forget about the whole night. So, to the creepy guy in the mask waving at me from the end of my path and sitting on the fence, please, let's not meet. Ever again. This incident happened to me last year on Halloween. My little brother and I were home alone since our parents had gone out to a Halloween party. They had tasked us with handing out candy to the trick-or-treaters. This bumped my brother and I out because we had made plans to go trick-or-treating with a few friends. Our parents told us that we were told to still be trick-or-treating, and that we could instead invite our friends over to the house and hang out there. My friends declined my invitation to come over because they still wanted to go out trick-or-treating, so that left me home alone with my brother handing out candy. A lot of people stopped by our house, and by 10, almost all the candy was gone. My brother and I decided that we'd eat the rest. We were sitting on the couch, watching a scary movie, stuffing ourselves with candy, when there was a knock at the door. I stormed off the couch wondering who the hell could be knocking at the door this late. I assumed that it was just some late-night trick-or-treaters, even if that was the case, I had turned up the porch lights and Halloween decorations off, which should have been a dead giveaway that we were out of candy or that we weren't home. So I assumed it was my parents. Being cautious, I looked at the people and saw a suspicious man standing on our front porch. He was wearing a black hoodie with the hood over his head, which made it difficult to see his face. The only detail of his face I could spot was that he had a beard and dry, crusty lips. There was no way that this guy was a trick-or-treater because he wasn't wearing a costume and he was far too old to be trick-or-treating alone. His hands were stuffed in the front pockets of his hoodie and he also looked very thin. Every single red flag went off in my head about this guy. There was no way in hell I was going to open the door. Still looking to the people, I watched as he knocked on the door again. He seemed desperate for us to open the door and he was shaking a bit. It wasn't cold outside, definitely not cold enough for someone to be trembling. He was giving me a bad vibe and I wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. "We're out of candy," I shouted to him. I watched as a smile spread across his face. It wasn't a friendly smile either. "Are you alone in there?" the man asked in a mocking voice. His voice was raspy and dry. "Should I call the police?" my little brother asked me quietly, gripping his cell phone. The man let out a low grumble and said, "Sounds like you're not alone in there." I continued to watch him through the people. His hands were still wedged tightly in his pockets, and he was still shaking a bit. I began to wonder if he was armed. I decided to take my action and spoke to him in the most intimidating voice I could. "Get the fuck away from my house or I'll call the police," I shouted. His smile faded and he bared his teeth. His teeth were piss yellow, and I concluded that he was probably some homeless crackhead, and he had a look of fury plastered on his face. Fortunately, he left without trying to break in, probably because he knew I wasn't fucking around with him. I didn't stop watching him through the peephole until I saw him completely off our property. My brother and I breathed a sigh of relief and decided to not call the police. My brother and I were a bit paranoid after this and watched TV until our parents came home. We didn't tell them about the man since he hadn't really tried to harm us. Now when I think back to this, I wish we had called the police because maybe we would have been able to prevent a murder. You see, the next day we found out this elderly woman who lived a few houses down from us had been brutally murdered. Her neighbor had found her lying on her front porch covered in blood. She had been stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck. My brother and I immediately knew who had done it, and we told the police what we knew. They couldn't do much from the information we had given them since we hadn't seen many details of his face. They went on a hunt for the man but never caught him. I blame myself for the poor old lady's murder because I could have prevented it from happening just by calling the police. I think the most disturbing thing of all is the fact that he didn't take anything from the old lady's house. Her house had been left untouched, but he could have gone in and taken what he wanted. Since her door was wide open, this means that he just wanted to kill. That was his only intention. He didn't want money or jewelry. He only had the urge to murder. So to the creepy crackhead Halloween slasher, let's not meet.